So that's one thing. But the other thing that people are like super upset about, and they keep saying like, well, I bet you just like characters that are one-dimensional, goody two-shoes, like good. And these are two very different concepts. Like having a morally good character does not mean you have to have a badly written character. And there are examples, and I think part of why I like this question from Butcher Pete is because there are examples of one-dimensional villains and there are examples of one-dimensional heroes. But understanding where the villains and heroes are is a moral question. It's not just a question of whether or not I like the character as a person who likes writing and literature and storytelling, right? Like these are two different questions. Like the example that I've used on YouTube a little bit is that like Luke Skywalker is a morally good character, but he's also a kind of, especially by the end of Return of the Jedi, a fairly complex character. He's not just a one-dimensional. He's got flaws. He's got problems. He's got issues that he's not a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu or whatever. Like he doesn't start out with all the skills he needs to win the day at the end of the movies, right? He needs to grow and develop. And that's an important part of writing. So you need moral goodness to be a hero, but you need complexity to be a well-rounded, interesting character. Both of those things are true. They're not mutually exclusive. You can have both simultaneously. So it's been driving me nuts reading so many comments of people going like, oh, you didn't like some of these bad, these characters. You think these characters are bad because you just want some goody two-shoes like, good person archetype, whatever, that has no flaws or interesting attributes. These are totally separate issues. And I think they are also totally separate issues where it comes to bad guys. And I think all of the best bad guys I can think of in literature or in fiction, in movies, they are either bad guys that are so ridiculously iconic that they can overcome a lack of development, a lack of character development. Darth Vader, sticking with Star Wars theme, Darth Vader in Star Wars is not developed in any way. I have absolutely no idea who Darth Vader is, what he wants, what he cares about, any of that kind of stuff. None of it matters because he is ludicrously iconic and terrifying. And right away, I mean, I know what he wants from an action standpoint, but I don't know what his inner life is about, right? Like, I don't know what he feels about anything. He seems to just be horrifying. Jaws, right? Like the shark I don't empathize with the shark. He's just a monster, a terrifying monster, right? Or we've got really, really great villains like, Hannibal Lecter. Or you've got villains like, movies like No Country for Old Men and things like that, where like you're really into it with the character and you're really developing an understanding of who the characters are. So for me, it's not either or, it's just what you want to do with it. But it's also like, yeah, I think you do have to empathize. For the most part, you're going to have to empathize. All the best Marvel villains, I would say, are the ones that you can actually like Baron Zemo, or ones that like I actually really understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, that's my like initial soapbox for this whole thing. So just because it's like I've been dealing with this Arcane stuff for like weeks now, it's kind of irritating.
I'll just go ahead and summarize what I answered Butcher Pete with in Discord, because he did tag me in that comment, so I responded. It depends on what kind of story you're wanting to tell, because there are villains, there are antagonists, like you mentioned, Sean, that are very iconic, and their purpose is not to be interesting or to really be anything other than the great evil. You have the sort of story archetype of the chosen one versus the great evil. And you see that in Star Wars, like you mentioned. And you see it in The Wheel of Time.
What's sort of true in Lord of the Rings, right?
and
Like, I
in
mean,
Lord of
Sauron
the
is
Rings
just
with Sauron, and stuff like that.
the fiery
And
eye.
Harry Potter, it's Harry Potter, the chosen one, versus Voldemort, the great evil, and it's just evil for evil's sake. And you don't want to make that kind of antagonist, that kind of villain, sympathetic at all, because it's not actually about the villain. It's about the hero's journey. So when you have a story like that you're trying to tell, no, it is not at all necessary. But generally speaking, most of the stories that we tell each other, especially these days, are more complicated and nuanced than the chosen one versus the great evil. The chosen one versus the great evil is classic. It's always going to be a winner, but we're telling a lot more nuanced stories to each other now. And so, as you said, the great Marvel villains like Baron Zemo or Warmonger or
Killmonger,
whatever. Killmonger, even Thanos to an extent.
Yeah.
They have good points. They have reasonable motivations, and you can understand where they're coming from. They're just doing it wrong. They're doing it like super wrong. And that's why they're the bad guys.